everyone, Suzanne here. I hope you're all well and welcome to Sew Custom. Today's video is going to be the making of this little number, which is a very basic crop top. So if you're interested in seeing that, then let's get started.
So starting with the pattern, I'm using my bodice block. I have moved the dart from the shoulder to the side seam. I've enlarged the neckline just slightly and I'm ignoring the dart at the waist. I've made myself a little facing there and both front and back are cut on the fold. So I've done the same here. I've enlarged the neckline, cut myself a facing, and I'm ignoring the dart at the waist. And for the sleeve, I've just made the sleeve elbow length. And then this is the fabric I'm using. It's from Fabric Styles. It's a medium heavyweight scuba, and I talk about it a little bit more in a previous video, which I shall link down below. But I'm just cutting out the front piece here, snipping my notches and onto the back. Same again, snipping my notches. And on the sleeve, you'll see in a little second, the 4 cm seam allowance at the bottom, I'm actually going to separate from the top of the sleeve. This will become a facing that will sandwich this piece, which is the contrast piece, and it will be made from this faux suede, scuba backed faux suede fabric, which is really nice. It's got a lovely texture to it. And then the last two pieces to cut out are the facing pieces, both front and back, and both cut on the fold. And now on to marking. And then popping a pin on the horizontal at the point of the dart, and then pinning directly through each line, making sure that they join up. And then sewing, I'm just back stitching at the start, following the line the whole way along, letting my threads run off, and tying. And this is how it looks. And of course I do the same on the other side. And now just to start the whole assembly, so I'm putting my shoulders together, right sides, lining them up and pinning. And then overlocking at my 1 cm seam allowance. And this is how it looks. And then back to those little contrast pieces. So I have folded the two pieces lengthwise, wrong sides together, and pinned. And I'm just going to take these to the machine and tack them in place. I want to make sure that this piece is sandwiched between the sleeve and the facing really accurately. So this will help me be a wee bit more accurate. But before I do that, I just want to tidy up the facing piece. So I'm just running that through the overlocker to make sure the inside's nice and tidy. So now putting the whole sleeve bottom together. So I'm sandwiching the contrast piece between the sleeve and the facing, and then sewing that at my 1 cm seam allowance on the overlocker. And I'm super pleased with how this turned out. And now to understitch. So I have my seam on the left hand side and I am sewing directly through that seam, and this will hold the seam up in underneath and keep it really nice and neat. I just really like the finish of that. So now to pop the sleeve in. So I'm just lining up my notches and my shoulder seam and side seams, and then I'm going to distribute the rest of the fullness between my pins. So that will help me when I come to sew to try and be a little bit more accurate. And to the overlocker. So I'm taking it nice and slowly here. I want to make sure I'm sticking to my 1 cm seam allowance, that my seams match up the whole way along, my notches matched up, and they did. And I'm really pleased with how that turned out. And now just to pin up the side seams. So making sure the seams match up the whole way along, making sure my little contrast pieces match up at the hem of the sleeve, and then overlocking at my 1 centimetre seam allowance. And again, I'm going nice and slow here over those seam lines, trying to make sure everything lines up through the machine. And they did, so I'm super pleased with that. And now just to tidy up the hem, so I'm running the hem through the overlocker because I want the inside of this little top to be as neat as the outside. So I'm just pressing up my hem allowance along the bodice, so it's 2 centimetres, and pinning in place. And then I'm going to stitch that in place with a long stitch, just a long straight stitch. And this is how it looks. And then back to the sleeves again. So I've pushed my facing in underneath and I've popped a couple of pins on either side of the sleeve seam. And I'm going to stitch in the ditch here. So I'm making sure my needle is going directly through the seam line and catching the facing on the back. That will hold the facing in place. And then the very last step is to assemble the facing and pop it on the bodice. So I've just pinned the facings together front and back at the shoulder seams, and that's how it looks through the overlocker. And now I just want to tidy up the entire edge of the facing pieces, so I'm running the edges through the overlocker just to clean up, make sure I have a really nice curve there. And that's how it looks. And then just to pin that to the bodice. So I'm pinning first of all at the shoulder seams before pinning the front and back neck. And then taking this to the overlocker, and I'm going quite slow here. This top has a really nice curve at the neckline and I want to make sure I keep that, so I want to make sure I'm sewing really accurately. And I really like how this neckline turned out, so super pleased with that. And I'm going to do the same thing here as I did on the bottom of the sleeve, so I'm just understitching. I have my seam over to the right hand side and I'm just stitching the entire way along that directly through the seam. And again, just using a long straight stitch. So I'm pleased with that. And this will help to prevent roll, so prevent the facing from rolling out to the outside of the bodice. And to further help that, I'm going to tack down the facing at the shoulder seams, and I'm going to do it the same way as I did at the bottom of the sleeves. So I'm going to stitch in the ditch. So I'm making sure my needle goes directly through the seam line, running 3 or 4 stitches along it, catching the facing on the back. I used this same method in my previous video, which I shall link below. And here is how it looks. So I've paired it up here with a skirt. I made matching skirt, and I really, really love how both of these turned out. So I love the length of the top, I love the shape, I love the contrast, I love the top.
So I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, please do. And I shall see you on Friday with the making of the wrap dress. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic week. Bye folks!